Okay, let's just get to it. Oh, jeez. Yeah. The technical stuff today, I mean, as always, I'm a mess with my technical things. And we might watch a little bit more of Già nella notte densa. And I think, yeah, I think I have my sound working.
My hair looks good. My hair looks good. Yeah. And I'm the smartest guy in the room, as always.
No, not quite, because today we have a guest. So I'm gonna have to not be the smartest guy in the room. We have Tony Linke. This guy, who's supposed to be really loud there. But it's for some reason really quiet. You know, like I said, technical difficulties today. So yeah, and it's always because of a new thing. And the new thing today is that I have like I could always write on the screen, right? But now I can do these kinds of titles. You know, I'll just put like Chiaro Scuro, like this. And yeah, and I tried to program it so I could actually put that where I want it. Chiaro Scuro. But today, how I'm gonna use it, obviously, is going like this. Tony Linke. And I guess I'll put it right there, somewhere nice and favorable to Tony.
Beautiful.
What do you think of that?
I like it. By the way, how's my volume?
Say something. Say something more.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2. Hang on, and Why are these? Oh, yeah. The chats always show up on top. I'm gonna have to fix that. I'm gonna have to rearrange how I do my chats, I guess. But I guess let's put you like there. That looks pretty good. Yeah. And then, yeah, I gotta. Now we kind of look like little voice teacher sickles. There. On the on the Corellis. So it's a Corellis with voice teacher sickles. Anyway. Yeah, this is getting weird. So I had to get Tony on the show today because Tony lambasted me. Well, it wasn't a serious lambasting or anything, but it was well deserved. Tony was not impressed with my phonetics the other day when I was reading some Manuel Garcia. So I thought I would... Oh, jeez, there's that again. I thought I would bring up our school thing here. And then now I've gone and moved Tony over again. And we'll bring the passage from Garcia back, and we're gonna get Tony's I guess better take. Well, let's see. I think it's gonna be a better take because on top of being like an expert on all this screaming and stuff, Tony's really big on phonetics and knows a whole bunch about it. So we've got some of his, we can call this semi-original materials, I guess.
Yeah, it's an extension of the official international phonetic alphabet.
Yeah, so we're going to be looking at Tony's extension of the international phonetic alphabet, and he's going to explain how that works. Both of us are professional teachers, although he's much more professional when it comes to phonetics, obviously. And you can get in touch with me if you're interested in voice lessons or coaching in operatic technique at the real Mr. Opera at gmail.com. And then what have I done here? Looks like I started playing something. Sorry, guys. There's just a million things. Wait, let me stop this. Okay. Yeah, sorry. I was trying to do... Jeez. Yeah, so what I was trying to do was... oh, God. Not this. I wasn't trying to do that. But okay. This isn't going well. It's like the MIDI. It's MIDI stuff. I swear. Okay, anyway, you can contact me at therealmropera@gmail.com, or just watch my stuff, and then you don't have to bother me. And Tony, where can people get in touch with you if they're not totally done with both of us at the end of this?
They can get in touch with me either on social media, where they can look up for themselves what profile names I have.
Yeah.
It's usually Tony Link or Tony Link Music, or on my website, tony-linker.com, where you can also find my email address, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and as you can tell, you better be someone who, I don't know, who's willing to take charge if you're going to work with Tony Link, because you're going to have to look him up by yourself. No. Okay, so shall we first get your take on the actual passage from Garcia, and then, not that yours isn't an actual thing, these are all actual things. And by the way, I found the word twang in this text.
Interesting.
In just the previous, so let me back up real quick because my ADHD demands it. We had this section that we went over where he talked about, let's see, it was...
I saw nasal twang.
Mechanism of the consonants, yeah. And in Mechanism of the Consonants, he talks about... that was the section
one later,
on,
I think.
Sorry. Yeah, he talks about the nasal vowels needing nasal twang.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I think it'd be a good idea to find the original French now, because this is a translation, and see what is the word he's actually using. And then I'd like to know, how does it get to be the word twang here?
Twang.
Twang, yeah. I know they have nasar and they have nasal in French. These two words talking about similar sounds. And I saw one French voice teacher saying nasar is the twang one, and nasal is nasality.
Interesting.
It's one of the organ stops on the organ. Nazar.
Or as the Americans would say, nasared.
Nasared, yeah. So, do you want mechanism of the vowels too, or just or should we just do consonants?
I think just the consonant stuff.
Or okay, and wait, because we have the whole. Let's see, yeah. This is so. What about elements of words?
Well,
or do you want just what we just?
I can just quickly say what I would defined as elements of words from, like, I'm not a phonetics expert, but I studied this
Right.
thing a couple years ago. So it's like, if we want to analyze just the sounds, not even the intentions of like which sounds do we want to produce, how do we realize them, but just if we have a recording or if we see a vocal track or whatever, what do we hear, what do we see? Then we're talking about phones, not even phonemes, but phones. So if I do you hear that?
No.
Okay, if I do, you
Yes.
hear that?
Yes.
Yeah. So the other one
I mean,
was
I
too
can
quiet.
get my
but
headphones. Do I need my headphones for this one? I can get
No,
the
not
headphones.
necessarily.
No, okay.
The audience should hear it too. But any sound I could make, even like,
Okay. Yeah.
or that is a phone.
Okay.
Now if I have an intention there, if it's like, okay, let me realize 5 cardinal vowels or whatever we want to call them. That this is not a phonetic concept really, as far as I know. But like, let me realize a, e, I, o, u. Just those letters. Then I could have different ways of doing that. I could just say a, e, I, o, u, and that would be roughly corresponding to how the International Phonetic Alphabet defines certain vowel shapes. So
Okay.
the symbols for those would be a bit different than the letters that we use like on our usual keyboards. But those would correspond to those. But then if I add nasality, for example, because I tend to speak nasally, a, e, I, o, u, that's already not the same phones anymore. You could make a point that I'm going for the same phonemes and then I'm
Right.
varying them. And then you could indicate that by a nasality diacritic on top of the normal grapheme. But it's like basically the phoneme, like if I make it simple, the phoneme is the idea of the sound, and then the phone is the actual realization, right?
Okay.
And this is interesting to me because in singing we rarely realize vowels like they are described in the International Phonetic Alphabet.
No, you're
Where they
phoning it
say
in.
Yeah.
Get it? No.
I talked over your joke, so the same old problem.
Oh, I said you're phoning it in.
Oh yeah. So that's the one thing. The that's the vowel thing. But then I think there's an easy solution to that, namely saying, okay, vowels are social constructs. Let's say there's one default way of pronouncing vowels in the speech range, which not even all people obey, so to say, because it's just one way of doing it. But let's say we've defined one standard way, and then in singing we try to negotiate certain sounds with the audience. So it's like, do you agree? Kind of sounds like as if it was that. But I think you've talked enough about this before. The consonant thing is interesting to me because there's a couple of different ways to categorize consonants, and I think you just mixed up some of these categories. I remember you saying M is a nasal, but then it's also a labial. And,
A labial, yeah.
the thing is, it's both, but those are different categories. It's like saying,
Right.
this sound is edge. No, I think it's reduced density, when it could be reduced density edge.
Right, so you could just say all those things about it, basically.
Yeah, and there's we could go into the chart and just see how these are organized.
Okay, let me pull that up. And so you don't think should we get maybe a little bit of just Garcia's terms real quick, at least to just bounce against?
Yep.
So I'll just do the consonants because that's the more, I think that was the part with more features. The vowels, just how he thinks you make vowels. But we have seen that the consonants spring from the obstacles presented to issuing sounds by the organs of the mouth, viz., I don't know what vis means, by the way. Lips, teeth, tongue, hard palate, soft palate, etc. These organs combined in couples intercept every issue of sound or partially arrest it. When the passage is completely closed, the air accumulates behind the organs, and it is only at the moment of separation that the consonant is heard as an explosion. Okay, and what are the consonants thus produced? F, P, T, and CH, as in chin, K. Each two organs can only produce one explosive consonant. So are these what are called plosives now? We have explosives.
So I think Garcia is mixing up different kinds of consonants. Some of them I would call plosives, and some of them not.
So F is fricative these days, right? Or
yeah, and it never was a plosive because it doesn't have
Right.
an explosive sound.
Right.
So it's weird that he groups it together. And then the ch thing, as in chin, it has a different name, which we can get to, but I think it makes more sense to use these names once we've introduced them.
Right.
The chart. But we can read through it and just say
Yeah.
This
So I'll
weird,
just
this one's
read through it and then we'll go quick to the chart because there
Yeah.
was a couple of like curious terms. The next one is curious. What are the other consonants? The permanent. If the organs permit an issue from the mouth or nose, the noise of the consonants can continue as long as the breath. Thus are produced the L, M, N, T, H, R, S, S, H, W, X, Y, or E, U, I don't know, Y, Gl,
so, yeah.
and GN, Gn, I guess, or Gn. I'm not sure which one. He's not clear.
Yeah, it's really hard to know what he means because it's English. He probably didn't talk about the English gnome kind of thing, like GN, where you omit the G.
Or a sign.
More like lasagna, probably.
Lasagna, yeah.
But we never know because these are normal letters, and then phonetics are better transcribed by symbols that mean one thing and not 10 different things in 10 different languages, right?
Right. So besides the explosives and permanent consonants, other consonants called semi-explosives share the characteristics of both series. They produce a slight murmur which lasts during the very short time taken by the vocal cavity to fill itself with air. These are G, hard, B, D, and J. It is during this resounding, I need an effect for that, that they must be articulated so as not to be mistaken for the corresponding explosives. Yeah, so that was, we have these explosives, semi-explosives, and permanents.
Yeah, it's super weird. I don't get how these categories are defined because I thought maybe some of them are voiced, some are not, but then it's just not consistent.
Yeah.
It's not about voicing, it's not about place of production, it's not about manner of production. And those are the main aspects that I could think of defining sounds.
Right. Okay, so let's take a look at specifically how you would be doing this.
Yeah.
Now that you've given me a perfect segue, and you're gonna have to direct me where you'd like to go. I should. Really
let's stay on the left side mainly, I'd say, because some of the extensions I added to the right and to the bottom of this chart, we basically don't need them. I just wanted to flex my extended thing. We could as well have used the normal one.
Well, I
So what
mean,
you see
I think it's good for people to see, though, that people are out there doing this kind of stuff, and because I think, like, unfortunately, it's hard to catch it's hard to actually cross paths with them, but people are out there who are looking for answers on things. They're looking in the sources that are out there, And the sources out there are confusing or not answering the questions or glossing things over. So yeah,
Yeah.
and we've got some chat interaction. So let me know if you want me to bring that up, or if you're checking the chat.
Yeah, I'm checking the chat too. And I think some of the questions, like the Matt question, I can answer in a minute.
Okay.
In the flow of explaining the different categories.
And then I can maybe use my new feature that I put in here with the with the floating title, and then I can try to have the theme for that question. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So if you're just joining, we're here with Tony Linka, voice teacher extraordinaire and guy who does crazy screaming, and then also can somehow do a really good Nessun Dorma. He's joining us here, and we're looking at a chart that he's elaborated of the extended international phonetic alphabet. And this is one of the main tools for a lot of singers, I think. So, yeah. So direct me, Tony, is where we should go, and I can highlight if you want or whatever.
I think you can just center the thing a bit more so we see all the categories from left to right.
You mean like this?
Yep. And now you can zoom in as much as you can so it's big enough. But that's only luxury. Yeah. And now a bit to the left. Perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
So
let's cut off a little bit of the on the right hand side.
There's one or two categories missing, but it's no big problem. So what we see is basically two main aspects, namely the vertical one and the horizontal one in this chart. The horizontal one is place of production. So very, very loosely we could say there's labial consonants, so basically stuff that has to do with the lips. Then there's coronal, dorsal, and laryngeal as like big categories, but I think in practice actually we often don't use these terms. We go right into more nuanced thing. No, the document is going away.
Oh my god. No, sorry. I was trying. Jesus, there we go. Sorry.
It's bag.
My bad.
So we could have the teeth involved, and that would be dental. Makes sense, right? We could also have the teeth and the lips involved, so that would be labiodental. So far it makes sense. Then I think it gets a bit more confusing for people who don't know these terms. We have alveolar or alveolar. I think it depends a bit on region. You can just correct me if you know there's one.
I always heard alveolar.
Yeah, alveolar. So so that's basically the ridge behind the teeth. And we could bring up probably like an anatomical picture that denotes these, but I think that would be a lot of switching back and forth. So maybe only if people don't get it, they can write it in the chat, and then later we can look. Then we have behind the alveolar ridge, which is post-alveolar. Then if we go even further back, kind of like the very Texas direction, we get retroflex. And then it goes to the soft palate, the velum, the uvula, then the pharynx, and then I added the categories of epiglottis, arytenoids, and false folds ventricular. So those are extensions I added because technically if you have your epiglottis vibrate like this, that is a consonant, if you will. You could say, well, it's a vocal effect, actually. But there's nothing that makes this different from This one, for example, it's just that. So this is an Italian R, for example. But
I'm gonna highlight that so in case people are looking to see where this stuff is. So here's the epiglottal.
yeah,
So these are your epiglottal sounds that you're making right now.
yeah.
So do you want to show those
I
again?
can show later which one exactly I did,
Okay.
because
Yeah.
those are 3 sounds and I did one. And then the very last one, which we don't see right now, so you could scroll to the right a bit,
I'll scroll to the right here.
which is an original category, is glottal, so that refers to the vocal folds themselves. So those are just places of production. There's a couple of different sounds we can make in those specific places. So now we gotta go to the left again. And now vertically, there's manners of production. So different types of sounds in general, regardless of where
am I
exactly
going
they're
here?
being produced.
To where's these manners
just the left
Okay.
column
Aha.
of the first thing.
Okay.
That starts with plosive, nasal, and so on.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, the others, the other parts of that document aren't really important. Those are just
Okay.
about like
Gotcha.
super special sounds. So we have plosives, and this comes from explosion. So if I do, that's explosive. If I do, that's a plosive too. It's a plosive, and actually, you can highlight the P that you see in the bilabial plosive category. So now we're playing. I don't know what it's called in English. Schiffe versenken. Basically, we're going by
Battleship?
chordates now.
Is it Battleship? Schiffe versenken?
Probably this game where it's like
Where you try
category 1A, 1B.
Yeah. Battleship. Battleship.
That's what we're doing. So that's our sound. Now you can highlight the T
Yeah.
in the alveolar plosive. Oh, you can keep all of them highlighted if you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Just for now.
PT.
That's our
Yep.
sound. Then you can highlight the K.
This is velar.
That's
here.
our velar plosive. So it's a plosive that happens at the velum. The tongue actually blocking the airway around the velum, right? So the tongue is always involved with these
Right.
consonants. And those are just 3 of those consonants that Garcia mentioned. Now, all of those are voiceless, so the vocal folds are not vibrating during them. But of course, we could just have voice variations of them. So instead of P, that would be B. So that's right next to the P.
Right.
B is also a bilabial plosive, but it's a voiced bilabial plosive. And we could have D instead of T and G instead of K, right? So those are just plosives in different places of production. Now we could talk about nasals.
That's interesting. Also, by the way, is if you look up tips on how to do ventriloquism, they show you these specific relationships for substitutions. So, for instance, P and B can be substituted for each other. Well, not P and B, but well, anyway, they show you these kinds of charts, and then
you basically in ventriloquism want to avoid bilabial consonants because you see the lips moving with those, right?
Yeah.
So you want to imitate the sound of a P or B with something else, which I'm not a ventriloquist, so I don't know what the best option is.
I think they use like a T for P.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
The dog teed on my leg kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like, or key.
Yeah. I actually want to talk about
Key to
one
mine.
more plosive, namely the glottal plosive.
I'll move it over so that it's. Is it
Even
visible
further?
yet? No, I don't think it's visible yet.
All the way to the right. Yeah. So this one that looks like almost a question mark.
Yeah.
That's the glottal stop. That's a heart attack.
Okay.
And that's, naturally it's voiced, right? So those are all plosives. It's weird because you wouldn't think about the glottal stop as a consonant, but The International Phonetic Alphabet does, because you could have vowels with a glottal stop in the beginning or without it. So
Right. Well, that's what, and that's
technically
kind of
it's a
similar.
separate phone or phoneme even, right?
Right, right. But if you're, I
And then
mean,
there, sorry, yeah,
you're, yeah, it's just different labia. I mean, that are you, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Anyway.
true. And the other ones that we didn't highlight, they aren't too relevant for English or Italian or French. I think I could mention the retroflex ones. That's kind of like the stereotypical Indian D and D sounds, right?
Right. And
So
isn't
that's
the American R, isn't that retroflex or no?
yes, but it's a different manner of production. So we're gonna get to that later,
Okay, okay.
right? So you don't see it in the first line
Oh, right,
yet.
because it's not a
We're gonna see it
retroflex.
later though.
Right, okay. Not a
Yeah, yeah,
retroflex
and
plosive.
that's the weird thing. The like less structured way of thinking about this is like, yeah, but now I'm mixing up these manners and places of production, and that's what Garcia's doing.
Right.
And then so that's why I'm a bit confused by Garcia. Let's go to the second category. We don't have to do all of them, but just the most important ones.
Okay.
Nasal. So a nasal consonant is any consonant with the nose open. That's nice. That fits our singing definition of nasal.
Right.
So M is a voiced bilabial nasal. N is a voiced alveolar nasal, right? And if you have forgotten already what those different places mean, you can just Google. Wikipedia gives these like short sentence definitions of that.
But I have to stop you because
Yeah.
I had a teacher who was a little bit spacey lady, and at the time there was this like millionaire or billionaire or whatever who actually turned out to be, I think, like a fake, or he reneged on his donations to the Met. But anyway, they called this whole area like the Villar Circle or something. Alberto Villar was the guy's name, and she got confused somehow in her mind, but she called it the Villar Ridge, this alveolar ridge. So yeah,
I mean, there's even the velar thing. So like, what if velar does velar consonants, and then it gets even more confusing.
But this was Villar, like VR.
Yeah, yeah.
So VR ridge.
It's like some voice teachers mix up arytenoids and retinoids. I don't even think retinoids is a word, but some people write that. And then there's different pronunciations: arytenoids, arytenoids,
right.
retinoids. Pretty confusing.
Well, and we were watching Corelli yesterday, and I was mentioning that his tongue sometimes isn't quite reaching the alveolar ridge.
Yeah.
So you get these weird consonants because he's just refusing to let the hyoid bone move to accommodate the consonant, and so you get this kind of kind of sounds.
And that would be super interesting to transcribe that phonetically, where it's like he's trying to pronounce normal words, so the phonemes have different phonetic realizations than what would be standard, right?
Right. And then how would you, I wonder what you would indicate as a phoneticist. Like, what do you wind up putting there? What you heard?
I'd probably have to see the Corelli thing, but let's work through the whole thing. So we have all the vocabulary, and then we never have to see this chart again. I think one more you can highlight is the velar nasal, the sing sound. It's basically a combination of N and G, right?
Right.
That's a nice symbol, actually.
Notorious in classical pedagogy, this one.
Yeah. And then it's interesting, there's gray areas for pharyngeal, epiglottal, and so on, where it's like we don't really know whether we can make nasal consonants in these places. Like whether we can make consonants there. Probably we could. Like just use a nasal growl, like.
Right.
Okay. So probably that one shouldn't be gray, right? But it's like for lots of these possible sounds, we don't even have symbols. So we see a lot of blank space. And then
Right.
in places where people think this shouldn't be possible, they denote it gray. But all the gray spaces could be um, actually filled out with symbols as soon as someone sits down and says, "Here, I have proof that this is possible." Let's go
Okay.
to the
Right.
trills. Trill's going to be interesting because we're talking about different realizations of R. So there's the long R, which is the alveolar. That looks like a normal R that you just highlighted. That's
Uh-huh. And that's not this alveolar.
It is. Yes,
It is. Okay.
was good. That was good. And the funny thing, you can highlight it. And the funny
Uh-huh.
thing is, as far as I know, they don't have a symbol for unvoiced,
Aha.
but it's
So
possible.
they think of it as just adding the voice, or what?
Well, they have a symbol for the voiced version, but they don't have a symbol for the unvoiced version, as far as I know, because this is the extended alphabet, and I searched for basically all extensions that somebody else made so far. So there's a diacritic to indicate that there's no voice. So they put like a little circle
Okay.
on top of the thing, but it's weird that they don't have its own symbol because it's not too ridiculous of a sound to make. And you might sometimes end up doing that in singing for
Right.
some reason, right?
Well, and
This
if
is
you're getting into like a sh sound, then the adding voice changes it a lot.
yeah. And then just because I did it before, the epiglottal trill, that one. That would be, yeah, the voiced and unvoiced versions. And the funny thing about this is you can nasalize those, right? So you can put
Right.
a nasal diacritic on top, which is like a little wave. But then you cannot make, and that's the reason, by the way, I got a bit confused. That's the reason why the nasals up there are gray. You cannot just make a nasal sound without it being a trill or anything like that, or any of these other categories. A nasal would just be sending air through the nose because of the air being blocked somewhere else, not to go
Okay.
out the mouth,
So
right?
the
And
nose
that's
has
just
to
not the
be
case
like
if
the
it's too low.
primary. The nose has to be the primary thing
Yeah.
for it to be a nasal, rather than
taps
a
or
nasalized.
flaps. So we could have taps or flaps are basically short R's, for example, like ah ra, or even in America, butter. And I'm
Okay.
not referring to the R. I'm referring to the double T.
Yeah.
That's the same sound as the Spanish or
And
Italian
Americans, there's one Americans use that Canadians don't, I think.
Yeah.
So Americans say not at all.
Not at all. Yeah.
Not at all. And then Canadians say not at all.
Not at all. Yeah.
So that would be an example of that, right?
So that's an interesting thing, because if you don't know phonetics, you would write ara as A-R-A and not at all with T's, or like other contexts with D's
Right.
and all that. And a phonetician would just say, well, that's this symbol. It's like
Okay.
the almost
Right.
R-looking symbol, and that's
Right.
a voiced alveolar tap or flap. I prefer flap, I think. And then there's, you see there's other options, but most of these don't even have names because they're not super everyday.
Right, and this
least
is
not,
this is supposed to work also with languages that like don't have vowels, for instance.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Yeah,
Chinese.
most
as far as
languages
I know.
do have vowels, I think.
No, but I mean, like Chinese, for instance, like they don't have that concept of like, oh, this is A.
Oh no, they have like 10 different concepts of
Yeah.
what A is, right?
Yeah. But they don't, and they
then
don't assemble them together into words. Like in
Yeah.
like with English, like where like that's a letter.
Yeah. So that's another thing. The letter in phonetics or in linguistics in general would be called grapheme.
Grapheme. Okay.
Yeah. And the the phonemes that we're talking about are referring to the sounds. So they have the vowel
Right.
sounds, but they don't have the vowel graphemes.
So you have
other
wait, and
graphemes.
so you have graphemes, phones, and phonemes.
Yes, yes.
Right.
And then also lots of other words that we don't need, but like
Right.
it
Well,
really
the
gets more complicated.
obstruents. What was it? Obstruents and
Yeah, the obstruent thing is weird because I find it weird that this is apparently the first thing you can read on Wikipedia because it's just not the practical thing.
no. I mean, I
for
saw
this
it
kind of
triggered
thing.
you. I was like, "Whoa, easy." I didn't mean anything by it. I just Wikipedia
Yeah. It's like it's weird that I think it's just
This
like an
is
alternative theory of how we could uh categorize these things, but it doesn't really have to do with vowels and consonants. It's just like a different mapping.
right.
The fricatives, they have a lot of symbols here, and I think that's it's gonna be the most important one for singing because with the plosives, yeah, you gotta make some adjustments. Sometimes you have a bit less air. You could aspirate more or less, depending on what mode you want to sing in and all that. Then the fricatives, you could have bilabial. Let's try this together actually, because this is not an everyday English consonant. Can you make like a friction sound
Oops.
with your lips touching?
Oh,
Yeah,
and
I think
I'm
this
in
is
the first
an
one here.
SOVT exercise. Might be something that Titsay would recommend. Yeah, it sounds a bit like a V, but it's not a V because the V
Right.
would be labiodental, so that would have the teeth,
Right.
right? Um, then we have the THs, voiced and unvoiced.
So is this like in no, that's not what's in Polish for this kind of like L sound that's with the line through it, the letter L with the line through it, and it's like głos. Głos. Głos.
No, I think that one. That one, in my opinion, is almost more on the vowel side, if you will. But then
Okay.
it depends a bit. What's a vowel? What's a consonant? Those lines get blurred. I think we
Right.
have the w as in English, classified as a consonant, and we can search for it. It looks like the normal letter. I don't see it right now.
It's like it's L with a line through it. It's
Yeah, I know.
Oh.
I know the letter, the grapheme, but it's like, what's the sound? Like
Right.
just phonetically, what would we transcribe it as? And I think it would be a similar transcription, maybe as the English wa, as in water.
And then
Right,
people might be at that when you mention that, and then I'll just let you address it since people sometimes get this idea. They'll say something like, no, that's not how it is in my language, whatever.
Yeah.
And they show some subtle but to them really significant difference.
Yeah.
And then just how would you address that? Because that that might be in different languages. You have the same symbol maybe, and then these speakers won't agree on what the sound is.
Yeah. So I think it depends on whether those differences that they denote are phonemic or phonetic. So whether that makes for a meaning difference, or whether it's just a different realization of the same thing. If I say p versus p, that doesn't make a meaning difference. One p had more air, and there's a way to denote that. You could write a little h after the p to denote that there's air, like that. But it's phonetically different, but not phonemically different. You could make a rough transcription and just ignore the extra air,
Right.
basically. Right.
Okay.
But then if in their language, like Danish has all these different vowels. In Danish, I cannot speak Danish, but like probably if I say there's 5 vowels, a, e, I, o, u, they're gonna be like, no, there's actually like 500s of them. So there's no
Right.
500 vowels
So
in Danish, but it's like
the
to them
right,
those make distinct meaning differences. So they're phonemic differences. When in
right.
German, I hear these and they're like that's three different A's, basically, right? So to me, those would be phonetic. It's like if you have a weird way of speaking, then that's your realization of that same thing instead of
Right.
different things. So it depends on specific languages. I just found the w, you see it at the very bottom of the picture in the other pulmonic consonants thing. So the w is labeled as a voiced labial velar approximant.
Okay,
Approximant means
and I just looked up Polish and that's what was listed as the IPA for that sound.
yeah. So
Was this
that's what I
big
thought.
W's? Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
there could be a subtle difference, but just from hearing it, I'm saying, well, it's the same sound
No,
as
and
the
then
English
that's what I
w,
was
right?
told also is like the lips have to get kind of close together, but never.
But it's weird how people will come up with these really complicated descriptions sometimes when it's just like, well, it's the same sound as English w.
Right.
Just think of it as what it's like. Some languages don't have the u, the German or French u, so they're like, okay, so you have to. The tongue has to get somewhere there, and then it's like this. Well, just say e and then round the mouth. You.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
No, I think that's probably the best way to work on vowels, especially because there's Garcia puts like really specific areas for everything, but in
Yeah.
my opinion, it's all really adaptive, and a lot of the ways you can tune your vowels or change the resonance are fungible. So you could do that in one area or something else in another area of your vocal tract, and you kind of will get similar results.
Yeah.
Within limits. But
So I just quickly want to mention
Yeah.
some of the fricatives.
and
so we
and
have-
I'll look at the chat while you're.
Yeah. So we have the
you're talking.
alveolar s and z, post alveolar sh and zh. Retroflex basically would be like to English ears similar to those, but further back. Sh and zh. Then what else is important to German speakers? The palatal unvoiced fricative as an ich, Licht, is interesting, and then also the velar ach, lachen. Maybe also French. I'm not sure. No, I think in French, in speech at least, sometimes you have these weird R realizations where it's like merde.
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking right now what exactly that one could be. I think it's the uvular fricative. So the flipped R that you see.
You also have these kind of orphan sounds. Like someone might say the word yes,
Yeah.
and it ends like this. We.
Yeah. So that's aspiration at the end, and you'd indicate it by adding an H.
Right.
And then you could indicate it's not just some H, it's an H in the shape of an E. We.
Right.
It's not really sh yet. It's just very. So there's ways to phonetically transcribe that, but like in rough transcription, you wouldn't even care. It's just we, right? And then let's quickly jump just down a bit in the document to affricates. There it is in the center of the picture. You see it?
Yeah, I see it. I'll
Can
try to
highlight it for
center
the
it on the.
people?
Whoops.
So affricates.
1 second. I'll center it and highlight here.
Affricates are combinations of plosives and fricatives. For example, the chin one that Garcia mentioned is the third one. T-sh, like ch. And there's a bit of debate whether those are just combinations of two different sounds or whether they are so quickly pronounced that they're one sound now. Ch. And in Garcia's thing, they're regarded as one thing. But now it's like, well, we could think of them as combinations, and then they're affricates. Now we can jump back to the approximants. There's a couple of different uh, kinds of approximants. We have the normal ones like the English R, which is the alveolar voiced approximant. It could also be
And that's over this
to
one?
the left, yeah. So
Yeah.
this one, it could also be post-alveolar if you form it further back, but then we don't have a symbol for that.
Uh-huh.
Then you have the retroflex, which is more of the Texan kind
This
of
one?
thing.
Yeah.
Or is it, I know, yeah, the
Yeah.
um,
Roger
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Roger. Roger.
yeah,
Yeah. Over.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then we also have lateral proximants. So the sides of the tongue are relevant for those like L. The alveolar lateral approximant. It's the L.
There we go.
Right? And if you make a flap in that L position, it's weird. That would be a lateral flap, but this is not too relevant for most operatic languages, right?
I think I may have had to use one in an opera before.
Yeah.
Where we had like these words from one of the languages of the coastal First Nations that were in Vancouver before. We did like a magic flute with a theme from native things. And maybe it's not that, but the word I had to say was tis'irq. This kind of...
Sounds almost like one of these non-pulmonic click
Ah, okay. Yeah, it
noises
was...
that we see in the bottom right corner.
Oh, okay,
And by the way, pulmonic means that the lung gives air.
Ugh. But that click, yes, but the one before it was tis'irq. It was, they would say it had to be kind of like liquid. And there was this deal with...
Liquid, by the way, liquid is another word that doesn't really fit in this chart. Liquid would be a group
or
of
slurry,
anything
slurry.
that
That's what they would
sounds
say.
like it's flowing. Basically,
Okay.
that's why it's called that. So an L would be a liquid, an R would be a liquid.
Okay.
I think even
okay.
like
I can make it for you, but it's not this flap thing, definitely. So it was... I think Welsh has
so
it
anytime
too.
there's a weird side of the tongue thing being involved, it's probably got
Yeah.
a lateral in its name.
Okay, lateral.
But those are like really specific sounds where
Yeah.
I'm not too sure either. But so most of the consonants were highlighted. We didn't highlight all the fricatives, but those are the ones that Garcia is talking about. Now we could go back to Garcia and see, okay, what are the similarities and what are the differences? What we could try to make sense of why he's grouping them in these
And I've
categories. It's really weird to me.
I've also got Corelli if we want to look at his consonants. And it's later Corelli, so he's going full old man with his consonants. But here we go.
Also, I think Corelli had a lisp. I never hear him pronounce z clearly.
I don't know that he had a lisp when he was speaking.
Yeah, I don't know either. But it would be interesting to listen to interviews.
I think.
And find
Yeah,
out.
I was listening
Because
to
maybe
his
we're
interview.
doing these really sophisticated vocal analyses where it's like, oh, he's lisping now to modify the
No,
consonant.
no,
and then
no,
in
but
the
there's-
end, turns out-
No, there's this interview with this guy. With what's his name? Wait. Let's see. With this.
Dovrebbe un cantante servirsi della voce di petto? No.
What's his name?
Stefan
Zucker. Stefan Zucker. There's a Corelli interview with Stefan Zucker, I think,
Yeah.
where he's trying to, and Stefan Zucker, if I recall correctly, is like trying to get him to say something, and Corelli's not saying it. He doesn't want to say it because he doesn't think it's true. He's trying to, anyway. He's talking about the mask or something, and he's
Yeah.
trying to get Corelli to say that the voice goes in the mask or something. And there's a, but And Corelli says, I don't believe the voice goes in the mask, but he uses the letter S in that, the sound S in there. I don't remember a lisp
It
in my
sounds normal.
memory. It sounds
Okay.
normal. So I think it's just like, because if I'm like refusing to let this come up, when I make an S sound, my larynx really wants to come up. I can hold it down and kind of reach up, and it'll make a distorted S just from like brutally holding the hyoid down as I make an S. So I think that's what he's doing. He's more interested in the next vowel, so he's not gonna compromise it even a little bit for the consonant. But I've heard others doing this too. So the quick, easy conclusion to jump to is that they're imitating Corelli, but I think it's more functional.
Yeah. By the way,
so, yeah.
just to clear, because I see the obstruents and sonorants thing, seems that obstruents are plosives, fricatives, and affricates. So just the first two categories. Oh, no, sorry. Just the first category, the fricative category, and the combination.
Right. Yeah, and then everything
else would be sonorants.
Right.
I mean, it makes sense. But
and then those
it's
are broken
practical
down
for
into
us.
consonants and vowels, right?
Yeah, it's
So
like this is not a useful mapping for singers, because
No.
we care about where and what and whether it's voiced, right? So
And the rhythmic parts are really important to me as a singer with consonants. And when it's going to be before the beat, which is like almost always the consonant before the beat, and then when the beat hits, you're already on the vowel kind of thing.
Yeah.
Except for glottals. And then glottals go right on the beat for some reason.
Yeah.
But they don't consider them consonants. And then, what else about consonants? The big thing about consonants is also that sometimes they suck. Especially like N and M. So you'll hear people replacing them, if they're looking for fuller density anyway, with like unvoiced consonants.
Yeah.
So M just, or with denasalized voice consonants. Sorry. So like M becomes B. Instead of mama, you maybe have like ba, but they hide it. Ba,
Yeah, and it's the same place of production, right?
Yes.
It's bilabial in both. Yeah.
Yeah, and a little bit that what is it called? Is it the McGurk effect, where you kind of, maybe that's not the McGurk effect. No, McGurk effect was where you hear, it's like you hear the same sound and they play two different videos, and you wind up hearing two different things based on what you saw. Yeah, really weird. So he's got let's see. Explosives, F, P, T, and CH.
So the explosives are one fricative, three plosives, and one affricate.
Okay, that's kind of random.
Weird. Yeah, it is. It is to me.
And then permanence, which I had major philosophical problems with.
Yeah.
With this semantics.
We have a lateral approximant, the L. We have the nasals, M, N. We have the dental fricatives, or like the. I don't know if it's voiced or not. The. Could be both. We have an
where
R.
are you? Okay. Where are you? I don't see those. Okay, yeah.
I'm
I have
just,
L, M,
reciting
N,
them.
T, H.
Yeah. Then we have the
Oh, yeah.
R, which is
Yeah.
the alveolar approximant. We have the S, which is the alveolar fricative. We don't know whether it's a voiced S or not. Z.
Right.
In English, you'd probably transcribe the voiced thing as Z. But then this is an originally French text, so we don't know.
Right.
SH could be sh. So that would be post-alveolar. It's the nice symbol that looks like this. We have the W, which is it's this special thing that is listed not in the chart but lower, namely the voice label velar approximant. We have the X. What X? It could be gz, like G Z. Could be that. Gz, which is an affricate too, but we don't know what he means. We have the the Y could be a y. And then the GL could be olio, this kind of thing.
So it's almost it almost seems to me like he didn't work very hard on this section.
Yeah, yeah.
You
I
know,
just
like,
don't see how they're related, really.
yeah, it's a bit of an maybe
even-
this section is a bit of an afterthought for him or something, or I don't know.
It could be actually. I mean, you could try to say all of those are voiced. So the th could be th, but then what about like
Right.
breath? You don't say breath.
Right.
So he just doesn't mention those. And then I don't get why G like g, b, d, y or j or whatever, those are different from the others. So
Yeah.
so it seems there's a tendency of voicing in the permanent ones. But I don't know. But you know, even
But
some
not
of those
with
are plosive.
sh. You
So
know,
why
sh
is
is
bd
not.
less explosive?
Yeah. So, who knows? There's something else I really take issue with, which is that he's making claims that you can project your voice essentially
Yeah.
with consonants.
Yeah, bullshit.
And
I heard that
watched-
too, by the way. A soprano told me that I don't need to sing loud as a tenor. Don't push the voice. You have consonants.
I heard someone try to take this advice. You know, he was being a good boy, whatever. Conductor was kind of in a position of power over him beyond the immediate production, you know. Like a lot of influence on how this singer was singing. And the conductor had tried to claim to me that I would be able to use not so much voice and just a lot of consonants. And now that I remember, he was claiming that this was like historical instruction or something. And I wonder if
And
this
it
is the source.
if you read Garcia.
Yeah. And it is if you read Garcia. And it's just absurd, I think. I mean, but the thing is, you can test these things.
Yeah.
And so I watched someone testing it, and it was hard to watch because it's a real struggle. You do wind up hearing the consonants, right? But they wind up being the loudest part.
And
Almost.
it's much more work. It
Yes.
makes singing much
Yeah.
harder.
Yeah. Yeah. And it seemed not to be protective in any way.
No.
So the guy was struggling really hard, seemed really uncomfortable, using very high pressure. Because, I mean, what else would happen if you're trying to focus on consonants? You
Yeah.
can't make sound other than by building up a whole lot of pressure and then trying to... Yeah, and what's funny is that that's exactly what Garcia warns against.
Yeah.
Jerks, force of voice, substituting force of voice for clearness, precision, energy of articulation. Those are all things I consider would happen if someone is trying to carry the voice on consonants.
Yeah. I also like violence would cause singing to resemble barking.
What's the
It's like-
consonant in barking? It's more of a vowel, I guess.
Yeah, it is, and it's like I'd like to see like instead of "Di legua notte," like this. You could probably travel far if you have a like dramatic baritone dog. I guess.
Oh, yes. No, I have
Yeah.
my cool. It doesn't work with my bubble, though. I wind up having... So if I get you off the screen, then... Yeah, I think it's way cooler like that.
Olivia is asking in the chat whether we can find this extended phonetic alphabet somewhere, and you can find it on my website, tony-linke.com/
Hang on.
free-material.
Oh, you can type it in the chat, and I'm actually gonna stick that.
Can I actually type links into the chat, or will YouTube delete them?
It might take it away. So tell me again.
Tony-linke.com.
Tony, whoops. Hang on, I got caps lock on. Tony-linke.com.
/
Yep.
free - material. And now you can try out if that actually works.
I can bring that
If that
up.
actually leads you to the address I hope it's leading to, but I think it should.
Oh, let's see. Tony. No.
Yeah, and then when you're on that side, you have to.
Is that correct?
To scroll down.
Is that correct, Tony? My link there, by the way.
Yeah. I think the link looks good. So you have to scroll down to my own material, and then you can click on a link, and it leads you to my Dropbox folder, and then there's a subfolder, the extended IPA, and there you have it. It's a bit complicated, but it's just one of many other resources, so I have to.
And
keep
it should let me type into the chat. So I typed it into the chat. That'll definitely let me do it. So there you go. And I don't think we have This Is Opera with us because the connection is really bad.
Yeah.
So, probably because I'm zooming. So I'm attempting to like zoom with you and then also stream to 2 different channels.
Yeah.
It's not working out so well. If people in the channel want to donate some money on a semi-regular basis, then we can do restream and troll This Is Opera harder. But it's probably fine just the way it is. Send me money anyway, though.
Yeah.
Anyway,
By the way, I didn't answer the question. If a normal P is plosive, what is the P when Draco Malfoy says Harry Potter? I think it's just a very, very aspirated bilabial plosive.
bring up your... Oh, where'd you... No, not that. Well, I don't know why it broke. Seems like I can't get my... Oh, there it is. Ah, that works. I'm going to try to bring your thing back. Where were we here? Yeah. No, take it away. Take it away. Bring it back. There we go. There's your thing.
Nice. By the way, maybe I can add one thing now that we have the document there.
Mm-hmm.
if you can scroll down a bit to the so that we see the full vowel chart.
Yeah, I'm just moving your text over a little bit here.
Yeah.
Well, I put it in the chat, so I'll just hide this now.
Yeah.
And what am I doing?
Scroll down so we can see the full vowel chart. Yeah, that's it already. That's too far.
Diacritics here? Oh.
No.
Oh.
Higher up. Yep. That's it.
Vowels.
You
I
can
see.
zoom in on the vowels if you
Yeah,
will.
I'll center this here.
So that one's slightly more vowels than you find in the normal IPA chart, actually. Let me just quickly compare which ones I added.
By the way, if you're in the chat, guys, could you give us just your quick update on how our audio levels are? Yeah, neither of us can really like monitor this as we're doing it. Then we just have a surprise at the end when we watch afterwards. Crap, the levels are totally off or something like that. So let us know how it sounds. Is Tony about the same volume as me, or am I louder, or is he much louder? Let us know. That's really helpful, guys. Yeah, anyway.
I think if you just zoom out a tiny bit.
Mm-hmm.
One more? Yeah, perfect. We see at the very bottom the central open vowel, namely the ah. And this to me, like the one that looks like a capital A, basically.
I'm going to circle because I think I'm obscuring things.
Yes, this one. Yeah. So this one is not part of the official standard IPA vowel chart. But it's the one I use in German.
And
to me, it's the most normal ah.
But can people use this without paying you?
Yes.
Okay.
They can use that sound. But if they don't pay me, they have to pretend it's the front ah.
Okay.
So they have to write it as the small one, and then they can indicate by usage of diacritics that it's more centralized. No, but it's
thank you,
weird to me
Nikolai. Thank you, Nikolai Primark. That's very helpful. So yeah, sorry to interrupt you there.
Nice. So I find it interesting how in terms of singing we often talk about like you and I, we probably don't do that, but lots of teachers often talk about bring the vowel more forward, or it's very far in the back or whatever. Where it's like, okay, IPA has symbols for all of these. It doesn't usually have the centralized ah symbol, but now it has it in my version. So we have like 3 different ahs. We have ah, we have ah, and we have ah. That's respectively the left of these ah symbols. The other ones are rounded, so with lip rounding, and then ah. So we don't need them. But it's like, okay, if I'm singing different ah variations, which ones am I using? I'm not really using any of them because my mouth is usually a bit more open. But like, just tongue-wise, what am I doing if I sing ah? What am I doing in terms of IPA if I had to transcribe it? Is that the central ah? Is it fronted? Because my tongue ah, now it's fronted. But what would make it a back ah? Is that already back?
Well, if it's back, then yeah, but if it's back, then
It's a fake.
It's like even in complete vocal technique, they have this difference between neutral ah, and edge ah.
That kind of drives me nuts about CVT, actually.
Yeah.
These vowels that they use to me are really subjective.
Yeah.
And then it's not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just that to me, it's in the wrong spot. That's the wrong place to have something so subjective. Just a small criticism of.
Yeah, and the question is, how could we make it more objective? Because if we used IPA, which they kind of do, because they use example words, and example words usually stand in for very specific phonemes.
Right.
So they kind of use IPA even if they don't use the symbols. But then the CVT also know that you cannot use IPA for the fifth octave edge range.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. It's not
So
the same
yeah,
thing.
I mean,
So
I guess
how-
where I would come down on that is that to me, vowels, you shouldn't use vowels like that, because you should use them. They're really important, but they're attitudes. Whereas vocal modes function on position and motion, not on vowels. They don't care about vowels.
But pedagogically, if you had a beginner singer and you wanted to teach them overdrive, would you go only by imitation, call and response? Do A.
Well, what I do is, so I have this basic.
Yeah.
It's fun to visually do this, but the reason for it is because the plan I use is. So people say, do you use imitation or do you use like specific things or what? And it's yes. So you just dance around. So you try imitating, and then you try to let go of the imitation. Maybe you're going to take a specific position, and then et cetera, et cetera. If you have specific positions that you have trouble linking together, maybe you need to look at motion, or sometimes you can't achieve a specific position without, or you can achieve it more easily by just doing a specific motion. There was an example of that yesterday where I was talking about in what I think is this more kind of overdrive based approach in opera. Maybe it wasn't yesterday, but that you want a big mouth opening, and for some reason it's like a little bit bigger than what you'd expect. It's not necessarily huge on all pitches, but it's a little bit bigger than what you would expect. And for some reason, to get to that position, it helps to forget about the position and just think about opening quickly. Because when you opened quickly, you went further.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then, once you've established, I don't know, 70% of what you're doing through position and motion, as I call it, by just putting body parts in a particular location, then you think of the vowel that you want. And then you're working from here, I think. Or, even if you're not winding up with the sound, like maybe you're going for it. Or something like that. Yeah. So to me, position and motion.
I think I actually do it in a similar way. I kind of differentiate what level of student I'm working with, or it's not even about what level of student, but like how advanced is the context, so to say. If it's so basic that we talk about chest voice and head voice, then I might also pretend there's objective vowels. And I might use some of the CVT concepts. Even though CVT doesn't give very specific definitions, I have specific definitions where it's like, okay, overdrive to me is not just an it is yell timbre. So it's hey. And then in classical, if you talk about opera drive, it doesn't necessarily have that. So there you have a different interpretation of the same vowel. And then logically to me, curbing vowels would be more closed than overdrive vowels, no matter whether my mouth is actually more open. I could have a very closed mouth on overdrive, oh, and I could have a very open mouth on curbing, oh. Curbing has a more closed timbre, regardless of my mouth shape. So now I have this specific thing, but that's what I came up with. CVT doesn't write it. They give sound examples, and it makes most sense if you interpret it like this. But yeah, it's very prone to be misinterpreted.
Yeah, and
So-
one problem that occurred to me the first time I saw that, I was like, okay, well, how would I explain this to someone who doesn't have access to the exact English accent that they're thinking of?
Yeah.
What if I want to take this to China, for instance?
Yeah, and they might have Chinese example words, but I know the German example words are bullshit. Like they
What-
use I don't even know what the German words were, but they use for OE the edge thing. They use the English word herb. For an American there's an R in herb.
Right.
Or do you say herb? No, you say herb, right?
I say herb.
Yeah.
Herb.
So
Herbs-
like
herbs and spices.
Maybe as a Brit you'd say herb, but then that's not the
Herbs
same
and
as
spices. Yeah.
yeah.
That's where they got
And
that
then
thing. Yeah.
phonetically, that's not the same as the German Öffnung. You don't say
Right.
that sounds like a German accent if you say herb. No, it doesn't sound British. Herb, right? So it's trying to be very extensive and objective, and it's failing to be so. And it would be better if it was less about the IPA positions, and if it was more about like certain circumstances where okay, overdrive vowels have to be yell timbre, and we could most easily denote that as and o. Okay, write that down. A yelly a yelly o. Now it makes sense to me. And then in edge mode, theoretically, as we don't rely as much on the timbre, the doesn't have to be yelled. So you could be like, okay, now we already have an overdrive. Let's say that an edge is also yell. Or you could say, oh, the edge is different from the overdrive but then it doesn't make sense to just use the same symbol. So it's like,
Right. I mean, to me, the edge is it's like absolutely different from the overdrive Like in terms of like staying organized, I have to know which one I'm doing. For my opera stuff.
Yeah.
And the cost of mixing these two coordinations for me is going to be curbing, and it's unintentional curbing. And then the problem with that is it's really difficult to get back out again once you get it started.
By the way, one question. When you talk about reduced density holes, could that also be reduced density edge and overdrive?
Yes.
Or does it have to be curbing? Yeah.
No, I think it can be reduced density edge and overdrive as well. But I think often what happens is curbing. The curbing is going to come from trying to make it full. It sounds weird, but the curbing will come from trying to make it into fuller density edge and overdrive.
Yeah.
So the body kind of gets, I don't know what happens, but like my body gets confused once it starts, I guess. And curbing is just there like I don't know, like a welcoming old friend or something, or an addiction or something.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it. Well, I do know how to explain it. It accepts any vowel.
Yeah.
But you can stay metallic. So it seems like the solution. And it also lets you push really hard. So it feels like you're doing something that should result in more sound, but you don't get more sound. You just get more sweat.
Yeah.
And your vocal cords folds get more and more stretched out, I guess, or I don't know what happens, but it's hard to get out of the situation without, I don't know, 5 to 10 minutes of rest is crucial. But then even then, the rest of the night, you're a little bit, you got to be careful because you can trigger it again.
Yeah.
Kind of at a moment's notice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and for those of you who are watching who don't know this term that I'm talking about, is this, I call it a reduced density hole. And the reason it has a name is because I was talking to someone else who experienced the same effect, and that person is a CVT teacher, and we came up with this name for it. If you were to compare the sound of, let's say, Giacomo Lauri Volpi with Franco Corelli, something about it is lighter with Lauri Volpi. Now, Lauri Volpi is not in a reduced density whole, but the difference between the two is density. Franco Corelli tends to sing things with fuller density than Lauri Volpi, even though both are using the same vocal modes more